Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are going to tackle one of the biggest, most fascinating questions out there. How in the world did life on Earth get so diverse? We're going to do it by breaking down 9 essential terms that really unlock the whole process. So, let's jump right in.
I mean, it all boils down to this, right? Just look around. Why isn't there just one kind of bird or one type of fish? Why are there millions and millions of different species, each one unique in its own way?
Well, the answer to that massive question is all about understanding the mechanics of evolution. And I promise, by the time we're done here, you'll have the vocabulary, the framework, to really see how life's incredible variety actually happens.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. How does one species actually become two? Turns out there are really 2 main ways this can go down.
First up, we've got something called allopatric speciation. This is what happens when a group gets physically, geographically split up. Just picture a bunch of squirrels living happily in a forest. Now imagine a huge river suddenly carves its way through that forest. The squirrels on one side can't get to the other side to mate anymore. Over thousands and thousands of years, the 2 groups evolve on their own, and boom, they become 2 totally distinct species.
And then there's the other side of the coin, sympatric speciation. Now this one is kind of a mind-bender. This is when new species pop up even when they're living in the exact same spot. Think about 2 groups of insects in the same forest. Let's say one group starts feeding only on the red fruit, and the other group starts feeding only on the blue fruit. Over time, they might just stop interacting, stop breeding with each other, and eventually become 2 different species, without ever moving away.
So if you're going to remember one thing, it's this: the barrier. That's the key difference. Allopatric speciation absolutely needs a physical wall, a river, a mountain range, you name it. Sympatric speciation, it happens right in the same neighborhood, with no physical barrier in sight.
Which of course brings up a really good question. If there's no physical wall, what's stopping these groups from just interbreeding? Well, the answers are what we can think of as invisible barriers, or isolation mechanisms.
So one of those invisible walls is called temporal isolation. And temporal is just a fancy way of saying related to time. So this is all about timing. It's when 2 groups are basically ready to mate at completely different times. A perfect example is 2 species of plants growing side by side. One might flower in the early spring, while the other flowers in the late summer. Their schedules are so off, their pollen just never gets a chance to mix.
Another huge one is behavioral isolation. This is basically when different species just don't speak the same language of love. You know, they might have totally different ideas of what's attractive or what a proper mating dance looks like.
And we're talking about incredibly specific things here. For birds, a male from one species might sing a beautiful song, but a female from another species literally won't even recognize it as a mating call. For fireflies, maybe one species flashes its light in a dot-dot-dash pattern and another does a long, slow fade. These aren't just minor preferences, they are powerful, invisible walls keeping species separate.
All right, so we've seen how one species can split into 2. But what happens when that whole process goes into overdrive? Let's zoom out a bit and look at how this can lead to something really spectacular, a rapid explosion of brand new species. This incredible process is called adaptive radiation. You can seriously think of it as evolution hitting the fast-forward button. It's what happens when one single species finds itself in a new place with tons of open opportunities, and it just rapidly diversifies to fill all of them. This is the perfect explanation for things like Darwin's famous finches on the Galapagos Islands, right? One original finch species got there, and over time it radiated out into all these new species, each one with a totally unique beak shape, perfectly suited for a different food source, one for crushing seeds, another for picking out insects, and so on.
And to really get adaptive radiation, you have to understand this term, the ecological niche. Now, this is way more than just where an animal lives. It's its entire job description: what it eats it, how it lives. It's like its profession and its home address all rolled into one. Adaptive radiation just explodes when an ecosystem suddenly has a bunch of empty jobs available. All right, for our last little section here, let's zoom right in on the nitty-gritty forces that actually push these changes forward, the key drivers happening at the level of behavior and our very own genes.
First off, courtship behavior. And this plugs right back into what we were just talking about. These are the specific songs, the dances, the displays that create those behavioral barriers. Whether these little rituals succeed or fail is a massive driving force in evolution.
Next up, we've got a huge genetic game changer called polyploidy. Okay, so most animals, us included, are diploid, meaning we have two sets of chromosomes. Polyploidy is when an organism, through a fluke, ends up with more than two sets. This is a massive mutation that can literally create a new species in a single generation because it's instantly reproductively isolated. It's super common in the plant world.
And that's really the core idea. It's a simple but profound change. An organism that suddenly has, say, 4 sets of chromosomes can't reproduce with its ancestors that only have 2. Just like that, you can get a new species.
And finally, what happens when those isolation barriers aren't totally perfect? Well, then you can get ecological hybridization. This is when 2 different species living in the same area actually manage to interbreed. A lot of the time, this might not lead anywhere, but sometimes it can create a brand new hybrid species with a totally unique mix of traits.
So, as we wrap this up, just remember, these 9 terms, they aren't just a vocabulary list. They are the names for the active, dynamic processes of evolution. They're the fundamental building blocks that help us understand the beautiful, complex, and just magnificent diversity of life that's all around us. So I'll leave you with a final thought. Now that you have this language, what are you going to see differently? The next time you notice 2 birds that look almost the same but sing a totally different song, or 2 flowers that are blooming weeks apart, will you recognize the incredible forces of evolution at work right there in your own backyard?